On that day, when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd behind, they took with them in the boat, just as he was. Other boats were with him. A great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat, so that the boat was already being swamped. But he was in the stern, asleep on a cushion, and they woke him up and said, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" He woke up and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." Then the wind ceased and there was a dead calm. He said to them, "Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great awe, and they said to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey?" Let us consider for a theme this morning, what type of fear is it? What type of fear is it? My friends, the writer H.P. Lovecraft once stated about fear, the oldest and strongest emotion of humankind is fear. And the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown. And when the nation's economic certainty hung by a slender thread, the newly elected Franklin Roosevelt said to them, "Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance." These quotes serve as a wonderful synopsis of the tension that exists in this morning's text, and the tension that confronts us too often in our spiritual journey. Fear has the uncanny ability to conflate rationality with irrationality, too often serving, the latter serving too often, as our dogmatized moral compass. Fear can make us dislike communities that we've never seen, people that we've never met, and countries we've never visited. Fear can make us take the lower path when we know in our heart and mind that a higher path is available. Fear can make us place more emphasis on falling when rising is within our sight. Fear can make us politically apathetic, hopelessly ignorant, and totally content. Holds mind and heart. What type of fear keeps you spiritually stagnant? What alarms you to the point of inertia? Have fear, don't have fear, because we all experience fear. But how do we respond? Do we respond with love? Or do we respond with hate? Do we respond with courage or insecurity? This is not to suggest that fear is not real or we should ignore it. The question is, what do we do with it? Do we guide our fear, or does our fear guide us? And yet, that first verse in this morning's text is pregnant with the possibilities of fear. On that day, when an evening had come, Jesus said to them, "Let us go to the other side." What exactly does that mean? And for we know it's the Sea of Galilee, but for our purposes, it is unknown. And seems to me difficult to have a first faith journey, one that would make us better people, that does not embrace some measure of curiosity and appreciation for the unknown. That's why the Apostle Paul says in 1 Corinthians, behold, I show you a mystery. The human condition, my friends, is many things, but at its core, it is a mystery. I recall when we were little, my grandmother asked us, why did you do that? I don't know. And she'd look at us and say, baby, what you don't know is start another world. Back then, that was a pretty cool thing to say to an 8-year-old, but it makes perfect sense. Because it remains true for all of us. What we don't know could start another world. Yes. So we must always have some curiosity. We also must have some appreciation for the mystery of life. But the goal of our inquisitive nature should be a deeper appreciation for who we are and who God is in our lives, and not some mythical pursuit of an absolute truth that does not exist. Faith invariably goes around when it seeks to offer definitive answers for that which is a mystery. When faith offers its expertise in the areas of psychology and sociology, it risks losing its moral voice on behalf of theology. And when that happens, it is a faith, I would argue, is driven more by its fears than by its beliefs. Faith that supported slavery, opposed women's suffrage, backed the Holocaust, ignored Jim Crow, passive about apartheid, is a faith unable to see in the 21st century how the 14th Amendment is applicable to all of God's children living in America, regardless of their orientation. That is a faith driven more by its fears and less by the love of your neighbor as yourself clause, which is so important to Jesus' project. This is why Sloane Coffin, one of my favorite preachers, said, nothing scares me like scared people. For that's what opens the door to the humanization. All you need is a few folk afraid of their fears. But as it is written in John's first epistle, perfect love casts out fear. Fear is the enemy that always defeats us as individuals and as a nation. I should say unbridled fear. What makes fear so disabling as individuals is its ability to make the situation we create in our mind oftentimes greater than what actually happens. Seldom does the fear we create that makes us reactionary live up to the expectations we've created in our minds. It also applies to nations. In 1991, the defense budget to end the Cold War was $358 billion. There was belief that the Cold War ended, we would have a peace dividend. Resources that had long been dedicated to war would have other purposes for the environment, for our social space, for our infrastructure. But as you all know, that didn't happen. And what we have now is a defense budget closing in on $700 billion. The Iraq War alone cost over $1 trillion, most of it borrowed, and we still don't know why we win it. The Soviet Union threat may have went away in 1991, but the fear did not. We just moved it over to another category. And I was struck by the words of Hermann Goering during the Nuremberg trials, one of the leading members of the Nazi movement, when he said what's required to incite a nation on its fears. He said, the people don't want war, but they can always be brought to the bidding of their leaders. It's very easy. All you have to do is tell them they're being attacked, denounce the pacifists for a lack of patriotism, and for exposing the country to danger. It works the same in every country. Garen's words, uttered some 67 years ago, have a haunting ring of familiarity that's applicable to the formative stages of 21st century America. But that's what fear does. It can liberate the worst impulses in our soul. Some of us are scared of socialists. Some of us are scared of Muslims. Some of us are scared of illegal immigrants that are non-European. Some of us are scared of losing a version of America that never existed. But the call by Jesus in the text to come to the other side is also a call to the church to reach past its fears of uncertainty, to assist those who have yet to feel the touch of God's love in any real and authentic way. For it is here that we are challenged to break through our own fears in order to realize the church at its best by being in community and inviting others into that community, fortified by God's grace, anchored by Jesus' inconvenient love. Amen. The disciples in this morning's text have left the safety and security of the crowd, heading toward the amorphous other side. And while at night they're the prime candidates for fear. And then a storm hits. Isn't that a great metaphor for the unpredictability of the human condition? Storm rises just when we're at our most vulnerable moment. Amen. When it's night in our souls. Heading in a direction we have no idea where we're going. When you're least prepared. You never complain about a bill that comes when you have the money to pay for it. As the great windstorm arose, the text tells us that the waves beat on the boat was almost consumed by the water, and Jesus is asleep. And they go to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we perish?" Jesus woke up, rebuked the wind, "Peace, be still." The wind ceased, and there was a great calm. That ought to be, period, in the story. Ought to be cause for euphoria. We've been saved. But that's not quite what happened. Jesus said to them, "Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great awe and said to one another, "Who is this? Even the wind and the sea obey him." Now, there are a number of ways we could go with this passage from here. Too often, in my view, the text focuses on a perceived lack of faith by the disciples. After all, Jesus does say, according to Mark, "Have you still no faith?" But like Jeopardy, this is in the form of a question. And it's a closed-in question. It's a yes-no response. Doesn't take much. And bear in mind, while in a storm, they went to Jesus at night. Doesn't that bear some resemblance to Hebrews' definition of what faith is? The substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen? What I found fascinating is that the disciples placed one type of fear for another. The fear that prompted them to wake Jesus up in the midst of the storm is not the same fear that they experienced when the wind stopped. They were filled with great awe and said to one another, "Who is this?" That the sea and wind obeyed him. Transferred one type of